Hello, my name is Lauren Ziegler. I'm an attorney at Memphis Brow, a corporate boutique law firm that works with entrepreneurs and companies across a number of industries. Today, I'm very pleased to introduce one of our clients who is making an impact in the area of renewable energy. Rob Cirincione is the founder and CEO of Sunairio, a Baltimore-based technology company providing a new approach to energy analytics. Rob, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Lauren.
So Rob, before we dive deeper into your experience as an entrepreneur, tell me about Sunairio and the services you provide.
Sure. So Sunairio is a software as a service analytics company that performs climate modeling for energy and specifically renewable energy resources like utility scale wind and solar farms. We are an alternative to traditional kind of physics-based modeling approaches to weather or approaches to renewables prediction based on history or climate averages. We're an alternative to using something like a traditional high-touch consulting agency. We've built software and we've applied methods from engineering and finance and statistics to be able to do this kind of bespoke custom climate modeling work very fast, very efficiently, and in a cloud-based, web-based SaaS solution.
That's really interesting. How did you come up with the idea? What was the inspiration behind it?
So the inspiration was that my job got really hard a couple of years ago. And my job was working as an energy trader. So after grad school, I took a job here in Baltimore, where we're based, with Constellation Energy, working as an energy trader. And I worked for a number of years doing that here. I followed a colleague up to Boston. I did the same thing. And at a certain point, things started breaking. Things started becoming really difficult. And what I mean by that is a lot of the tools and the methods that we were using to predict supply-demand balances in energy grids and energy markets and their effect on prices, that started getting really hard. And it started getting really hard because of the penetration of renewables. What was happening was we were introducing a ton of weather volatility into our energy systems and energy grids. Before, we really only had to worry about weather and its effect on demand, heating and cooling demand as a function of temperature. Now we needed to care about, okay, well, is that hour, is it going to be 90 degrees, but is it going to be 90 degrees and sunny or cloudy? Well, if it's going to be sunny, is it going to be windy or not windy? All of that affects balances in energy grids and affects energy prices, and therefore it affects revenues that any energy resource like a wind farm or a solar farm receives. It affects profitability. It affects how well a utility can guarantee reliability to its customers. And all of that just became super, super challenging as we started building out more and more renewables. And so, finally I got to the point where, I surveyed other colleagues in the industry and said, hey, how are you guys thinking about these problems? And everybody said the same thing. Well, we're doing something in-house. No, we don't love it. No, we don't know how to deal with climate change. Yeah, the traditional kind of, analytics vendors don't seem to be offering what we really need in this industry to think about these risks. So I left and I started this company in 2020. And the idea was to build, a new sophisticated solution for managing climate variability for energy companies.
So you spoke about how your career as an energy trader kind of inspired you to create this product. Tell me, how did you get from, I think you told me you were in Boston working as an energy trader, and then how did you get back to Baltimore, and what did that process look like for you in making that decision to kind of take the leap?
So I wanted to pick a spot that I thought would be productive, a good spot to found a company. And for me, that meant a place where I had a professional network, where the cost of living was relatively low, and where I felt I could, recruit talent, and sort of all of the above. So for me, it was a combination of the professional network and the ecosystem, and also livability, cost of living, that kind of thing. I've lived everywhere up and down the Eastern Seaboard, DC, New York, Baltimore, Boston. And, for me, Baltimore was sort of the right mix a good sized city that had the resources I needed. I thought, to support a new business, but also didn't have the expense of a New York or Boston, because we have a finite runway. So that's important.
Right. So, and you definitely picked a time. This was, I think, 2020, right? When you formed the company in May of 2020, I believe. I think I got involved with you maybe about a year later. What were some of the challenges that you experienced during that time?
Well, not being able to meet anybody in person was certainly a challenge. I mean, I know everybody was going through that, but so much I think of the process of growing the business centers around relationships, and making new relationships is just harder over Zoom, right? You just don't connect with somebody the same way you do as when you're together with them for a few minutes in person. And it's just it's easier to explain your concept and your value proposition over a casual conversation. It's just so much harder over Zoom. So I think that was a big challenge. For me, I think, personally, it was just a big challenge doing something that was entirely different than I had done in my career. I was used to working for Fortune 500 companies, and this is not. So it didn't have any of that support. So that was difficult.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Totally different change, different environment. And to kind of pull on what you said a little bit ago, part of being an entrepreneur is it's really convincing others to invest in your vision. Like you said, it's hard doing that over Zoom versus in person, but you did successfully complete a seed fundraising round earlier this year. You had a number of institutional investors that participated. Talk a little bit about what the process was like and what advice you might have for other startups that are going through the same process.
Sure. So the advice is it's hard. It takes longer than you think. You have to speak to more investors than you think you have to speak to. You're going to get almost the same percentage of no's that you get in sales, which is high, and you have to stick with it. So we ran it as a process, and some of the advice that was given to us that I think is really useful was, you're either fundraising or you're not fundraising. There's no there's no in between. And if you are, it is your number one priority every day. And we ran it as a process. We had a list of targeted investors that, were investing in companies in our space, and we're investing in companies at our scale. And we systematically went through all of them, and we worked very hard on our pitch and explaining our value proposition. I think I probably, repeated my pitch 500 times before I even talked to an investor. That's another piece of advice. Get your pitch really good. It matters. And then don't get discouraged when you realize it's going to take an extra 3 months, because it takes longer than you think starting out.
And prior to this process that you started, I believe you were in a tech accelerator. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and how that helped, or kind of bridge the gap between sort of the startup to the fundraising?
Sure. Yeah. So we were selected for the second cohort of the Techstars Energy Tech Accelerator, which was a great experience for us. It was energy focused, and we're doing something kind of at the intersection of climate tech and energy tech. So it was the perfect environment for us, and it was useful for me because as a first time entrepreneur, I didn't know any of these things. So the experience I just described about fundraising had no clue really what that was, or how it worked, or how to put together a pitch deck, or even what type of investors to talk to. So sort of the kind of the ABCs of getting a company off the ground and getting funding. I think that's what that experience was very useful for. And I left with great connections. The other founders and entrepreneurs that I met through that program were fantastic, and they're still friends to this day. And so I think that was really the springboard for our successful round. We started fundraising right after that program ended, and so we just used that momentum and we just ran with it.
So talk a little bit more about the types of clients that you serve and how your services provide value to them.
Sure. So there's two high-level categories for our customers. One is what I call the reliability customer. So that's like an electric utility. And in a lot of the country, an electric utility's responsibility is to guarantee reliable power to their customers every day of the year, every hour of the day, all the time. And that job used to be fairly simple. They kind of understood, how much heating and cooling demand they were going to have. And then they had a bunch of generation, coal generation, natural gas generation, things that you can turn on and turn off and set at the right level and sort of meet your demand. But that function, that reliability function of a utility is becoming increasingly more complicated as we introduce renewables. Right? So instead of being able to rely on power plants that you can control, they're retiring those and replacing them with wind and solar that obviously we don't control. We can only sort of predict how they're going to operate. And so for a utility that has to tell its either regulators or its customers, yes, you can count on us to meet this demand every hour of the day for our 5-year planning period. That's a really hard thing to do in the energy transition. And so we help them understand, hey, given your resource mix and the climate change and climate variability in your particular footprint, this is actually the sort of magnitude and the likelihood of sort of the reliability risks that you face. So that's category one. Category two, the economic customers. And what they want to know at a sort of basic level is, what's it worth? They want to know, what's a solar farm worth? What's a wind farm worth? What's a contract for the energy from one of those wind farms worth over the next 10 years or 15 years? Or maybe just, what's that revenue look like for a summer or a winter or something like that? It's really it's kind of the opposite side of the same coin in terms of what we do for them. We're basically describing, hey, how is that wind farm going to operate? Sort of hour by hour as, the wind's going like this. And we help them understand, is your wind farm going to be operating when energy prices are high or low? And so it's really very similar to the kind of stuff we're doing with the reliability customers. It's just the economic component. So we're working with the investors on, is this a smart investment? What's an expected return or profitability ratio? Stuff like that.
So clearly you have a genuine passion for what you're doing. What excites you most about your work now, and what's a typical day like for you?
So there's no typical day, unlike what I was doing before. So what I was doing before, even though I would say, so when I was working as an energy trader, while every day was different, the markets are always different, and that made it really exciting. Your day to day is absolutely the same every day. So as soon as you wake up, you look at your phone and you look for new news, you get to the office, you see where the market is, you sit at your desk for the next 8 hours or 9 hours, whatever it is. You go out for 5 minutes to get lunch, you have it at your desk. That is your life every day the market's open. This job's not like that at all. Now, I'm generally still kind of in front of my desk because, everything is generally still kind of on Zoom and whatnot. But the kind of things I'm doing and schedules can be totally different one day to another. And, not only is that kind of variation exciting, but, you asked like what kind of things are, drive you in this. And, I'll give you an example that just happened today. We were having a call with one of our customers, and we were demoing, part of our solution. And there were probably 6 people, on this call with our customer. And some of them were kind of the management level, but one of them was what they described as, kind of the super user, the person who'd actually be using the software. And we demoed it. We said, you could do this, you could do that. And then we said, what do you think? And he just looked at us and smiled and said, like, I want to use this. I would use it right now. Can I have this right now? This would make my job so much easier. And that's, I think, why we're excited to do this.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So what has been the most surprising thing that you've learned over the last, 2.5 years or so as you've been doing this process?
I guess, generally the challenge of how hard it is to start to start a business and then to really be involved in a tech startup where you're trying to build something new that hasn't been done before. Just how difficult it is, how long it takes to sort of get anything done. That's somewhat been a challenge. I also didn't have a ton of experience in sales. So, learning how sales works and business development works is kind of has been eye-opening to me. I didn't realize that. I thought, like, oh, I'll just go talk to companies. I've got a great idea and I've got a credible resume and they should talk to me and they'll sign up right away. And you instantly realize, wow, it is way harder than that. And you're going to get a lot of rejection. And being able to talk to people who have been experienced in business development, who say like, oh yes, of course, like that's not, you're going to get a lot of no. You need to move forward and, you always need to be, focusing on, moving forward and the successes you have and building on that. And slowly it does. It builds and it builds and it builds and you build on that momentum. But I didn't have a lot of expectation. I think my expectations were totally different from sort of how I thought early stage sales were going to go.
But it's all, obviously, new business is not for the faint of heart. As you just said, you have to wear a lot of different hats as a founder, like you were saying. And I think probably a lot of that has to do with also building a team around yourself as well. And so what's been, the fundraising, I'm sure, has allowed you to help build and grow that team. And you talk about that and sort of where you see Sunairio going,
Yeah, so we were super happy, super successful with our fundraising, and that allowed us to scale much faster than we would have been able to otherwise. And so for us, for software companies, scaling means hiring technical talent. So we've been able to hire fantastic data scientists, software engineers, CTO, and that experience has been wonderful. It's amazing to go from kind of a team of one or two to a team of 5 or 6, where you realize that you can now start developing and growing exponentially. And it really is true. Like as the team grows, there's so much more that we can do. And I look back at just what, kind of the solutions we had 9 months ago versus what we're able to do today. And it has just been the fundraising and the team has been absolutely instrumental in terms of being able to deliver a product for customers that, like I mentioned just a couple minutes ago, have that like, oh, wow reaction. You can't do that on your own. You need a team. And that, when I started out, I thought, well, maybe I'll just, maybe I can just bootstrap this, right? I'll just bootstrap this. And you just learn really, really early on that you're going to get so much farther with those resources. And I'm glad I made the decision to raise capital and grow this way, because I think where we are now versus where we would have been just growing organically, it's night and day.
Well, I know that myself and everyone at Memphis Brow has really enjoyed being a part of the journey with you. We're excited for what comes next. I want to thank you again for taking the time today to speak with me. I want to also give you the opportunity, if there's anything else you want to share with everyone, now's the time.
No, I just want to share that, yes, it's been a pleasure to work with Memphis Brow as well. We couldn't have gotten here without your support, getting us through fundraising and every other challenge that's come up. It's huge, but it's really nice to I was talking about like all the challenges you have, especially in sales. I think maybe what I didn't mention is I think what I've learned is really important is every now and then you kind of have to pause and turn around and look backwards. Because we're always so focused on like looking forward, and there's so much that I want to do and so much that we need to get done. If you just keep looking forward, it seems like you're not moving, like you're never going anywhere. You're just treading water. If you actually kind of turn around and look back at what we've accomplished over the last 3 months, 6 months, a year, it's a lot, and it's something I think everybody I know here in the office and on the team is proud of, and I am too. So thank you for your help in that.
Absolutely, and that's a great perspective. Thank you.